Hey, what's going on? This is Ugo Opara, a real estate agent and investor, and also a fellow NACA member. And in this video, I want to go and talk about how to run the numbers for a multifamily or, duplex, triplex, quadplex, or any type of rental property that you are thinking about picking up. And I'm going to show you how I run my numbers. All right. Um, One of the things I did early on in my investor career is I put together this little spreadsheet. This is my deal analysis spreadsheet. I run every piece of property through this um, just to make sure that the numbers make sense, right? A lot of times I try to do stuff in my head, and sometimes it comes out good, and sometimes it does not come out good. And I put this system together to make it very easy for me to come in, plug in my numbers, plug in my interest rates, how much I'm putting down, just everything, and it'll spit out the numbers that I need to make sure that the property is a good buy or if it's not a good buy. All right. So what we're going to do today is we're going to discuss a lot of the things that I put in here. And then we're actually going to run a scenario with my property, the property that I purchased through NACA. Thank you, NACA. And you'll see why, for me, it made sense to go ahead and purchase that property. All right. So one of the things I want to start off by saying is that one, I'm what's called a conservative investor. I am not speculative. So that means I don't buy anything and wait and plan the concept of appreciation into my purchase. If it's worth 150 and I'm paying 150, then my numbers revolve around 150. I don't see anything past that 150. What I do need to see is that cash flow. Okay, so I'm not an appreciation guy. I don't care for appreciation. If it doesn't happen, I don't care. If it does happen, I also don't care. But hey, obviously, I'm happy that it did. So my numbers are very conservative because I need the numbers to be conservative so that there's that much more skin. There's that much more meat on the bones, right? It doesn't make any sense right now. Let me go into a little bit detail. Hopefully, that makes sense moving forward. So right off the bat, one of the things that a lot of new investors screw up when they, start buying property, especially for the sake of renting out, is they miscalculate their expenses. So real quick, I just want to talk about kind of talk about. So real quick, for example, a lot of people think that if your mortgage is $1,000 a month and you rent that property out for let's say 1,100 a month, or in this situation, it should be 1,100. You rent it out for 1,100 a month. A lot of people would say, "Hey, okay, this is great. I'm netting $100 a month." Even if we bump it up to $200 a month, and now you're netting $200 a month, I would say that this is still a bad investment. I would not want this investment. I would not buy a property and know that my expenses are 1,000. I wouldn't, that my mortgage is 1,000, just my mortgage, PITI, just my mortgage is $1,000, and my rent is 1,200. I wouldn't be happy with just that 200. All right, and we're gonna go, and a lot of people screw up because they think, oh man, this is great, $200 a month, because their mortgage is only a set amount. But this is actually really bad because you're not taking everything into consideration. So let's go back to my deal analysis sheet, and I'm going to talk about what it means to take everything in consideration. So it's a little bit tricky the way this is broken down. So I have the mortgage itself as a separate thing, and then I have expenses. So part of this expenses is, part of this mortgage is principal and interest, right? So this is already factoring the PI portion of the PITI. And then over here you have taxes and insurance, which is a TI section of the PITI. All right. So mortgage and principal and interest, taxes and insurance is what makes up PITI. All right. So these are property taxes are the taxes on a property. Insurance is the homeowner's insurance. Maintenance and repairs. This is a big one. A lot of people don't factor in the fact that things will always eventually go bad, right? So, for example, the average water heater has a life expectancy of about 15 years. So, what that means is if you buy a property and the seller is saying, yeah, I just installed this water heater 5 years ago, you know that with proper use and care, it's probably going to get you another 10-ish years, right? Planning for maintenance and repairs now says you understand that in 10-ish and in about 10 years you got to replace the water heater instead of waiting those 10 years, and then on year 10 you shell out a bunch of money to get the water heater replaced, installed, and whatnot. You start planning for it now. You start making very, very tiny, tiny deposits into your savings account so that when that water heater does go bad, you have the money for it. It's not messing up with your sleep. You're not stressing. You're not losing hair. You're not getting gray streaks. You have that factored in already on a monthly basis. And that's the easiest way to do it. And that's the way I recommend everybody do it. No questions, doubt. You're an investor, become systemic with everything, and don't fall limb to your, don't fall prey to your emotions. Just set it and forget it. Okay. Utilities. Now this is also something a lot of people forget to factor in. There are apartment buildings where everything is tied into one source. So for example, there aren't separate utilities. So for example, let's say let's say you have my building, which is 4 units. The water comes from one line. So that one supply line is the responsibility of me, the owner. So I can't because there's no water meter for each individual apartment. There's just one giant water meter at the source of the house, and then it splits into each unit separately. I have to factor in the cost of me paying for water. Of course, it gets reimbursed from the people paying their rent, but I have to account for it in the event that, let's say, I have a quadplex and only one of my property is vacant. You know what I mean? Whatever the case may be, you just want to account for that, right? And because I'm conservative, I'd rather account for it now and never have to touch it and move on later. You know what I mean? Marketing. This just goes to anything that you have to pay for if you plan on marketing yourself. It could be something as silly as, paying $25 to go to Staples to print out flyers, just to hang out everywhere telling people you have an apartment for rent. It could be paying for a Facebook promotion. It could be paying to put it, I don't know, whatever the case may be, whatever you're doing to pay for marketing and promote your property, this is where you put that expense. Property management. Property management is awesome, but it's something that no one ever plans for, at least not in their first couple of purchases. They always assume I'm going to manage these things myself, and it's always a good thing to do, right? If you have the guts to do so, I think that's a great learning method. I always say partner with someone who knows what they're doing. Hint, hint, me, right? Rely on me, lean on my shoulder. I manage property. I have a quadplex myself. Take advantage of what I know. But property management is cool because it saves you a lot of money. You know what I mean? Typically, a property manager, they're going to charge you. Let's pull this stuff up. Use PM for property management. Property management is going to charge you 10% of monthly rent plus a 1 month placement fee. Right? So placement fee would equal. So for example, if we're using an example where your rent is $1,200, let's just make it $1,000 to be easy. Let's say your rent is, actually no, I'll get it to 1,200. Let's say your rent is $1,200, right? If the property manager finds a tenant, you have to pay them $1,200 for finding a tenant. Plus, you pay them 10% a month from that $1,200, so that's $120 a month. All right, so there's that. All right, so let's pull out the calculator, run the numbers. So if we have 1,200 times it by 12, your gross is 14. Was it 4,400 minus 120 times 12 plus 1,200 originally, 26,400. Gives you about 11,760. Right, and this is assuming your property is paid off. It's completely paid off. You know what I mean? Should be net. So here's an example of what the property management would do to your numbers. If you manage the property yourself, you would get to keep $1,400, right? But then again, you're at the whim of the tenants calling you. If this goes wrong, if that goes wrong, you're very much so in the day-to-day management of that property. If you want the peace of mind of not having to deal or not having to worry about it, then here's something to look forward to. That cost is 1640 just based on the numbers that we're running. And now you have the ability to, kind of lay back and, focus more elsewhere because, you have a property manager that's managing your property. A lot of people say, you know what, this is not worth it. This is a waste of time. And I completely disagree, right? Because in the future, I myself am very much so going to want a property manager. And I'm going to show you guys why real soon. So let's say you have 10 of these properties. 10 of these properties. So now your rent is 140,000. Your property management company is taking care of that, and you're paying them 26,000 almost, 26,000. And now you're netting this awesome number, right? So I would much rather be in some island relaxing, knowing that I'm going to get six figures no matter if I wake up or not, versus being where my property is, managing all of them myself, taking on that headache myself, just for the sake of saving 26,000. I think when you start scaling the numbers up, it makes a lot of sense to want to go and have a property management is in place. So I just wanted to talk about that because it is important. And if you're thinking about this long term in any way, that's a very important piece to keep in mind, right? But I'll be honest, I didn't account for property management when I on my quadplex because I'm going to live in there. I'm going to manage it myself. So that's property management. PMI is the next piece. Property. Property. Blah, blah, blah. PMI, private mortgage insurance. Thank you to because of NACA, that's going to be a zero. That's something that I don't have to pay for. Vacancy rate. I run the numbers at 10%. I think you should also run your numbers at 10%. But feel free to adjust this as you see fit. But I always recommend you adjust things up and not for down. All right. So that's pretty much it. What happens once you put all the numbers in is it creates what's called a total monthly expense. It takes that monthly expense, extrapolates it over here, so you have your expenses plus the mortgage, and it subtracts it from your cash flow. All right, so just a quick rundown on that. So now that you kind of understand what this is, and please, if you don't, give me a call, shoot me a text message, whatever the case may be. It's very important you understand what I'm talking about and not just taking it. I don't want you to just come in here, plug in the numbers, and make sure everything's good. You have to understand the numbers behind it. Okay. So now that you understand this, I'm going to actually show you guys how I run my numbers. The very first thing when I'm interested in a property is I go to Craigslist. If my goal is to rent this property, I need to know what other places around the property have rented for. You know what I mean? So if in my situation, I have a quadplex and there are 4 apartments in there. Each apartment building is a 2-unit, right? So for me, quad, so it's 2-bedroom each unit. Right, so I have a quad. Oops, spell bedroom right, bro. So I have a quad. It's 4 apartments, and there's 2 bedrooms in each unit. So I need to find out what does a 2-bedroom rent for. Does a 2-bedroom rent for in this area? So let's go ahead and so to find that out, I always default to Craigslist. It is such a good resource. I take advantage of this all the time. So I go to Craigslist. I go to apartments and housing. I type in my zip code. It looks like it's already popped it in. And in here, I'll type in, let's do 2 bedrooms. A 2-bedroom. Let's find out what does a 2-bedroom rent for. Now, if you're in Philly, it's very important you understand that, like, Philly's change switches it up so drastically. So be mindful of where you're crossing certain borders because, within walking distance, you'll see a massive fluctuation in rent. So don't play yourself by looking at comps of a more desirable area when your area is not as desirable, or vice versa. Maybe your area is more desirable than the comps, and you have to be cognizant of that. So here's a good way to take a look at it. 3-bedroom, okay. So we have a 2-bedroom here for $850. Another 2-bedroom for $850. This is a 5-bedroom for $2,500. Crazy. This is a 6-bedroom for, that's probably $600 per room. All right, so What is this? We have a 2-bedroom here for 525, and that's drastic. That's a big deviation. Am I even in my area? No, I'm not even in my. Yeah, I'm not even in my area. So here's my area. So we still have that. That's a 3-bedroom for 850. Another 3-bedroom for 750. This is pretty bad. All right, let's try 2. It's not showing me any 2-bed. Oh, let's do this. Let's get rid of that. Search out. There we go. It's much better. There we go. Much better. So now let's search. See what we got. 3-bedroom 825. 4-bedroom 1150. 3-bedroom 1000. 3-bedroom 1150. 2-bedroom 750. What pictures look like? Carpet, hardwood floors. Is a good comp. 750 for a 2-bedroom. 3-bedroom, 3-bedroom, 3-bedroom. I already clicked through these. 4-bedroom 840. That looks pretty. That probably is a lie. 3-bedroom 1800. 4-bedroom 1100. 3-bedroom 1100. 950 for 3-bedroom. 900 for a 2-bedroom. So real quick, I'm starting to get the feel that a 2-bedroom could go for 800, but we could probably do 750 to be on the safe side. 900 for 825. 800, 800, 800. Right on Market Street. Wow, I know exactly where that is. Oh, 4-bedroom 1100. 3-bedroom 1800. Yeah, so as you go through this, you start to get a better idea of what you think your units are going to go for. For me, I think my units are going to go for around 750. So, or let's even do 700 to be on the safe side, and just kind of take it from there. So when you start off, purchase price for me 281,000. Renovations, my renovations are 97,000. Of course, my interest rate 0.625. Oh, thank you, NACA. My insurance is already plugged in. All these things are already plugged in. Vacancy rate, as you can see, it pre-populated itself. It runs itself at 10% of the purchase price. Some people like to take it and do 10% of the actual cumulative purchase price. So that would be the total finance price right here, and that's rolling in the purchase price plus renovations and giving a whole new price. I think that's not the best way to do it, simply because of the amount of renovations you're doing. So yeah, that's my philosophy on that one. But we'll do it just to be on the safe, just for the sake of seeing if the numbers work. I have 3 units that are going to be up for rent. So that puts me at that number. That vacancy rate is really high. So this is why I don't like doing it for that number, because the vacancy rate is just absorbently high. 232 a month for vacancy is really high. So we're going to drop that back down to what I originally had it, which is just the purchase price. 51, still really high, but it is what it is. So there we go. So it starts pre-populating all this stuff for me, mainly just the vacancy rate. All this stuff really have to put in. The utilities, I kind of leave it 100. Maintenance and repairs, I kind of leave it 100. Insurance, you should be able to put that in based on the insurance quote you got from your insurance person. Property taxes, you should be able to pull that up from public records. If you don't know what that is, ask me. I'll find the public records for you based on the address you give out. So here we have it. I got 3, number of units. I put 3 here because I have 3 2-bedrooms, 1 bath. I think they're going to rent for at least 700. This is me being super conservative. So at 700. Right now, my interest rate, 278 at 0.625%. They're saying my mortgage is going to be 1047, and then my expenses is going to be 618. So cumulatively, that's putting me at 1665 monthly, and that's factoring just not just my mortgage but all expenses to keep everything rolling. And with all that, I'm still netting about $400 a month for a total of $5,000 a year. Now, some people, kind of make fun of me and say that's kind of low. So, what we can do is we can bump this up to 800, which I'm sure we can get because we're doing a lot of stuff to this place, and that puts me at 735, right? For 3 units, which I think is pretty cool, right? We're also going to add storage here. We're going to have coin operated laundry machine. So there's different things that I've done to try to add revenue to this place. So I'm almost confident that I can get 850, right? So, and at 850, we're not looking at almost, 888. It's a really good number. I mean, $10,000 a month for no reason. I mean, that's fantastic to me. And the thing that I like about this number is that it's a pure number. Like it really calculates for almost everything except for, taxes. Like gains, your taxes on your gains. It really counts for everything, right? It really accounts for everything. So that's the actual monthly flow. Taking into consideration the repairs, everything is being taken into consideration. And I really like this number. So this is what my scenario looks like. I think I actually run the numbers 750. And one of the things that attracted me so well to this property is that I still am living for free. Remember, this is a quadplex. I only have 3 units rented because I'm occupying one of them. If I decided to leave, here's what happens to my numbers. And if I'm really at 850, which I'm absolutely sure I will be, just 800. $1,500 a month. That's really high. That's fantastic. I'm making almost $20,000 a year, and that's phenomenal. So this is how you properly run your numbers. I hope this is helpful. Any questions you don't understand, please feel free to let me know. I am going to send you a link so that you can grab this spreadsheet that I've created. Make sure that you go to File and create a copy for yourself. And then the copy is what you're going to use to make changes, because what's going to happen is you're only going to be able to add comments to this page. You're only going to be able to add comments. You're not going to be able to change it the way you want to change it. So it's very important you come to the file, you click make a copy, and you take it from there. All right. So that's it for now. Again, my name is Ugo Opara, real estate agent and investor, and proud NACA member. Any questions or anything you need from me, please feel free to reach out to me. Thank you.